It's so much easier to make someone wrong than to sit with the discomfort in your nervous system of going, wow, my human, my son, my daughter, my partner, my lover, my friend is really going through something right now. But it feels easier to be like, you're the addict, you're the alcoholic, go to 12-step, pick yourself up from your bootstraps. What are you doing? Right? Like, we've conditioned ourselves in this world that the only way for us to function is that someone has to be wrong and someone has to be right.
Thanks for tuning in to the Elevation Recovery Podcast, your hub for addiction recovery strategies, hosted by Chris Scott and Matt Finch.
Today's special guest is Amy Guerrero, founder of Thrive in Recovery and recovery life coach. Amy spent 2 years stumbling around in the dark trying to find her own path to freedom. All she wanted was to fully accept herself, to feel whole and happy living sober. But she was stuck. She was pretending to be happy, thinking the next meeting, the next therapy session, that's when she's going to be fixed. Finally confident and comfortable in her own skin. Yet it wasn't happening. When she reflects on this journey, what kept her going? She was driven by a vision of success, that building this for herself meant she could then share it with others. When she stopped using drugs and alcohol, she turned her healing into her work and started sharing years of education and teaching to coach people to live life with freedom, fun, and clarity in all areas of their life and recovery. On her website, thriveinrecoverywithamy.com, there are many valuable free resources. For example, you can schedule a complimentary call with Amy, and you can get a free download of her ebook, Freedom to Get the Love You Want, an on-demand webinar titled Healthy Sober Relationships, and a free 6-page guide you can download titled The Number One Thing Keeping You Stuck in Your Sober Life. Additionally, you can also subscribe to the Optimized Life podcast with Amy Guerrero and Jess Janda, which is a show about stories and strategies to help you optimize your health, relationships, and your business. Thank you so much for joining us again, Amy, and blessing our audience with your wonderful knowledge and spirit and compassion for round 2. Really good to see you today.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. And Papaya.
And Papaya. Papaya's happy. She always loves to be part of this, especially when there's no one else home. First of all, I want to say congratulations on such an amazing interview. I think it was the website medium.com where you were interviewed. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that was so fun. What a
beautiful interview.
Thank you.
And you and I share a lot of the same beliefs regarding all the misconceptions about not just addiction, but the language and the language around the words addict and alcoholic and overcoming addiction, and how there's also this thing to where so many people really dislike the words surrender and the words love and forgiveness. And for whatever reason, at least in America, those tend to have kind of like this weakness associated from them. So you're just another, spirit on the same mission that I am, to help people really like learn this stuff, that, hey, when you're looking through online and you see the words like addict and even the word addiction, I don't even like the word recovery, but I mean, that's just the kind of common language. So we'll just start with some of these misconceptions. So I know one of the things I loved about that interview, and I loved the whole thing, was when she would ask you questions and then you'd be like, oh, how'd you overcome your addiction or something like that, or numbing your pain? You're like, no, I was masking. And so it's kind of how I view it too, is like my alcohol and drug use, it was a resource for a long time. I would get all sorts of physical and psychological benefits. And for many years, drugs and alcohol gave my life, at least subjectively in my own opinion, more positive benefits by far than the negative consequences. So it was a no-brainer. I was, masking my sensitive nervous system that I didn't know how to regulate on my own. I really feel like that was kind of my path, my destiny or something. So what do you think about all this as far as viewing addiction not as like a moral deficiency or like you were on the wrong path when you were addicted, but how maybe people This is actually part of their destiny, and it's actually a resource for a long time for a lot of people until it isn't a resource anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, 100% I agree. And I have to tell you, like, the discomfort that I sat with in my nervous system
Mhm.
as I was like, I'm pushing up against these questions, because that's the problem. If I answer these questions the way that you want me to answer these questions, then I'm going to be agreeing with the pattern. And I'm
Mhm.
so freaking done agreeing with this pattern, because we're not going to change it if you and I and our communities aren't speaking up in the fact that, like, if it wasn't for those substances, I might not be here right now. I mean, it is really that clear. It was such a part of my spiritual awakening to use what I use to mask the discomfort of my nervous system, and that it's safer for our world to identify it as a diagnostic code
Mhm.
and make it wrong and bad, because it helps other nervous systems feel more comfortable, right? And then it helps the systems pay for it when we
Mhm.
need treatment. But it's, I mean, like, is it really supporting us to to be who we've always been, and to allow us sovereignty and agency to be on our own journeys? It's so much easier to make someone wrong than to sit with the discomfort in your nervous system of going, wow, my human, my son, my daughter, my partner, my lover, my friend is really going through something right now. But it feels easier to be like, you're the addict, you're the alcoholic, go to 12 step, pick yourself up from your bootstraps. What are you doing? Right? Like, we've conditioned ourselves in this world that the only way for us to function is that someone has to be wrong and someone has to be right. And, like, that's what I think we're pushing up so much against with this languaging. And when we do that, we're taking away their agency. Like, I'm so grateful for every single experience that I had with drugs and alcohol and other weird behaviors too, because it wasn't just that. There was many masks that I wore. In order to be here now, like, that was going to be my path. That was going to be my journey. And I'm not mad at it at all. Yeah. So, I mean, I can say so much about this subject, because really, truly taking the stigma out of this conversation is where freedom can begin for someone. Because I don't know, like, I know from you, because we've talked before, like, the shame and the guilt and the I'm supposed to be like dot dot dot
Mhm.
is what kept me in the cycle of using things outside of myself, rather than really just being like, well, this is who I am. And it's very beautiful and perfect. And, that's what I see with my clients. And that's what I see in the bigger systems. And even on television and on all of I mean, drugs and alcohol are so prevalent right now today on November 5th, 2021, because people are using them at a higher rate than ever with all of the experiences that we've had over the last 18 months. And the way that it's portrayed on television, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, this is keeping the stigma alive. Go to 12 step. What are you doing? Like, pull it together. No talk of like, oh, your nervous system is sensitive. And it's been like that since in utero. Right. So I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you. Yes.
And it's November 5th. I'm not sure if you're a Back to the Future fan, but that was the date that Marty went back to the past, then Back to the Future, November 5th, 1955. How cool that it's the Back to the Future Day.
I love
And
that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, the stigma's awful. When I first started using drugs and alcohol, it wasn't even because I was, like, super curious. At first, it was peer pressure at first, and then it was kinda like the norm. So for my circle of friends, I wanted to fit in, and it was kinda like this societal groupthink programmed from mainstream culture and television, tell a vision, tell a narrative. And I was afraid to really be myself. I was like, we're programmed from our parents and our families and our teachers and our everyone that we're around. All our experiences, the TV. So I was just so programmed to do the stuff that everyone else was doing, and it wasn't like this conscious choice. Like, I'm really curious about this. I wonder what this is like. At least not at the beginning. I didn't have any care about trying cannabis or trying alcohol. I had to get peer pressure for me to try my first cannabis. I had to get peer pressured a lot, and I had to get made fun of. My friend, my buddy, I won't say his name, but I was 15 years old, and I was hanging out with him, and he went to go, smoke some cannabis with his buddy, and he's like, "Come on, come with us, come with us." And I was afraid to. I was like really nervous about drugs. I was into health. I was into surfing and bike riding and hacky sack, and I didn't want to do drugs or alcohol, none of that. So after a few times of, going home and getting like made fun of, called names and like bad names, finally I gave in. Like I said, not because I was like really wanting to do drugs or try it, but because I wanted to fit in. I was afraid to be myself because I wanted to fit in with society. And I think so many people are like that now, even with the whole terminology of addiction and recovery and fitting into what, you know, like recovery has to have this exact thing. Like you get off drugs and alcohol, you go to 12 step or some other modality, and then it's like all or nothing. You can't use any substances again for the rest of your life. And you have to like, you're in recovery forever, 30 years after stop using substances, you're still in recovery. What if you were addicted for like, what if you for 6 months you were, would qualify as having alcohol use disorder out of the DSM-5? Are you still in recovery like 20, 30, 50 years later? So just kind of breaking these, not only the stigma, but these misconceptions that stem from the mid 1930s where all this stuff kind of originated. And so
Yeah.
you also are a super specialist in sober, healthy relationships. And so we can get into that either now, or you can really anything about what I just said or anything you want.
Yeah. Oh, I just got so excited because I think
Mhm.
that what you just said is so relevant to us getting into this conversation about sober, healthy relationships. Um, you know, Peer pressure is probably one of the main reasons that we all do it. We all probably have these nervous systems, maybe that, just are activated more than maybe our friends are. But you had these very healthy ways
Mhm.
of coping with it, with health and with surfing and really like losing your mind in these activities, and so therefore regulating your body by getting out of the ruminating thinking. And we're already in that process when we're in that 10 to 13 age, and especially if we've had abuse or any kind of trauma in our childhood, then we can have a very activated hypervigilant nervous system that's constantly scanning for safety and danger. So when the peer pressure comes, then there's that bigger thing that comes, which is that desire for deep connection, that desire to be accepted, that desire to be seen and felt and heard for the beautiful man and young man that you were at the time, and to feel that camaraderie with the other boys. And that came through this vehicle of cannabis, that came through this vehicle of, you know, um, of drinking, of exploring drugs. And then your nervous system feels that relief because that's
Mhm.
what happens when we put something in our body, and it feels good. And so you continue to do that. And it's so interesting because, then we become physically dependent, or we start using it in the ways to become our medicine, to become the way that we cope so that we can walk through the world. And then we enter into that drama triangle. And we entered into it when we entered into it because of the peer pressure that we felt from our friends, where we became kind of a victim to the circumstance of, I want to be connected. I want to feel closer to these people. And in order to do that, I have to behave in the ways that they're going to behave.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because we do this in so many different ways. And when I relate to what a healthy, conscious relationship looks like, it's stepping out of that triangle. It's stepping out of like, I don't have to be the victim. You don't have to persecute me. And no one needs to be rescued here. No one needs to be rescued. Like, we're both sovereign individuals, and we can be in this relationship with all of our choice and all of our freedom and all of our messiness, and we can walk through this relationship together. But no one teaches us how to do this in a healthy way. And if you did have parents out there that taught you how to do this in a healthy way without the guilt of religion, or of how marriage is supposed to look, or how relationships are supposed to look, or how you're supposed to identify in your gender, like, you're very fortunate. But I don't know very many people who were taught these things. And it's such a blessing. And I'm so grateful to be able to bring this into the recovery spaces, because it's missing. And it's one of the number one things that leads back to the coping mechanisms, back to the answers outside of me. So very much all of this totally in alignment. Like, yes, let's go. Let's have this conversation.
Right. And before I start, doing some self-disclosure about relationship stuff, intimacy, childhood trauma leading to that feeling of, not feeling safe, always scanning. I just learned that from you the last time that we had spoke. That was like a huge revelation. It was like, that's what I was doing for I guess decades. I was doing it, always in an upregulated nervous system, scanning unconsciously for safety, to like, is this person safe? Is this person safe? But first, before I get into that, how awesome is it? The kids nowadays that are growing up with like so much more, that this spiritual ascension that the globe is going through, many parts of the globe, many people of the globe are going through, and so many of the kids, they're being raised now in just they're learning a lot of this stuff that, when I grew up, 1979, and then the early mid late 80s, there was no internet. It was just a much different time. It was the crack epidemic, the AIDS epidemic. There was a lot of it was culture was really, it was like mainstream. Now with this internet thing and all these different podcasts and videos, and just, you have access to all the information in the world, and maybe even in the galaxy, really, or for the universe. We have like these universal ideas, and they're on the fingertips of our phone.
Hmm.
But I guess for me, for relationships, I saw I probably shouldn't go into that, but let's just say I was molested. I saw someone close to me get molested when they were a little kid. I was molested 3 times by a babysitter, by like a middle-aged man, and someone else too. And so these were things that, and I was an empath. I didn't know any of these terms. But on the empath kind of spectrum, I'm probably a moderate empath and probably a moderate, highly sensitive person, HSP. So both those traits. I'm a triple Cancer, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Cancer, Cancer rising, Venus in Cancer. I have so much water signs, so just really intuitive. I used to have like precognitive dreams, and I used to be a lot more psychic than I am now. And so all of these things just made me so sensitive. And then getting molested several times, peer pressured into drugs. The vast majority of people are not empaths, are not highly sensitive people. And the vast majority of people don't even either know these terms or don't understand what they're like. So my friends, and especially one of my best friends, but actually 2 of my best friends, they would make fun of me all the time. You're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. And lots of people told me that, like I was disordered, like it was a literal disorder. You're too sensitive. You need to grow thicker skin. The sensitivity is a gift. I just didn't know it back then. So long story short, I was afraid of girls. All through high school, I was chicken to talk to girls. I was, uh, first of all, and also I got red hair. Back then, my hair was orange, and I had a lot of freckles on my face back then. And I was really, really scrawny, and I was short too, all throughout high school. I didn't go through like puberty and have my growth spurt until I was around 20. So I was a late bloomer with puberty and with girls, and so the longer I avoided girls, the more they scared me, right? It's kind of like this procrastination thing. My friends that were like 15 and 16 and 13 even and 14, they were out having lots of sex.
Hmm.
Mine wasn't until I was like 17, the first time I had sexual experience, and then I was like on drugs at that point. So, really what happened was I was so afraid of girls. Part of it was the trauma, part of it was the sensitivity, part of it was being a red-haired, freckle-faced kid that got bullied quite a bit in elementary school and even junior high for being, for looking different. I didn't know anyone else that was, bright orange hair, getting called carrot top. Can I play connect the dots on your freckles? Plus my parents were like these new age health food spiritual people, and so when my friends came over, we had like rice cakes and tofu and sprouts and Hanson's natural sodas, and so that was another source of getting made fun of. So just so much difference, and all these things just started to pile on, right? Pile on until eventually when I first started using drugs from the peer pressure, wow, I felt, like you said, that nervous system relief, especially when I started to get into alcohol and then Valium and opioids and all these CNS depressants.
Hmm.
Oh, I feel comfortable in my own skin. I feel safe. I fit in with all these people now. Hey, I'm cool. I'm doing drugs and drinking. I'm cool. And then when I started to sell drugs at the age of 22, then I was Mr. Cool. I started to get tattoos, shaved my head, got a red-nosed pit bull, got a big lifted truck, drank whiskey, sold weed, and sold some other drugs. As a result, not all the girls, but lots of the girls liked me. Lots of the guys thought, but you know what, Amy? When I got raided by the DEA at the age of 24, and thus them kind of forcing me to end my drug dealing entrepreneurship career. And then everyone found out, the small town of everyone that's kind of interconnected and partying. Oh, did you hear about Matt? He got busted by the DEA. My phone and popularity that was like nonstop from when I woke up to when I went to bed, like, Matt, come to this party, come to the bar, this, that, and the other. Let's hang out. When people found out that I no longer had drugs, guess how many phone calls I got per day? I had one friend left, one buddy, another alcoholic like me. We were and we loved that term. We self-labeled ourselves back then. We were proud of the fact. We're like, yeah, we're hardcore alcoholics. And he came over, and I remember a few days after getting out of jail, because I got bailed out, I had money to get bailed out. It wasn't too expensive. And we're sitting there drinking 40s in my backyard, and my phone. And right then, I started to really get it. Oh my gosh. So I had built up this persona. I had built up this character. What is the idea? What are the girls going for? The girls that I liked were going for the character that I had built up. And all of that stuff was just me trying to, I didn't know at the time, but get love, get connection, fit in with the group. And I guess that goes back to evolutionarily how, if the tribe doesn't like you, then they could kick you out. So, all these things were just so difficult. There was no internet, so I couldn't do research on things. So since I couldn't do research, since I didn't have a phone where I could learn everything, all I could do was just either believe or not believe what I was learning from television. All the 80s movies that I grew up in. Can't Buy Me Love, that movie, Can't Buy Me Love. and so many other movies, guess what? The bad boys, the girl would break up with the bad boy, and the nice guy, the really sensitive, nice, sweet guy, would get the beautiful girl at the end of the movie. So that's how I was like so impressionable through the 80s. That's when I was going through my theta wave childhood and then alpha wave childhood. So I was programmed to think that the nice guy got the girls. Then in high school, and then especially by early college, I realized, no, it's these confident guys. And so since it was the confident guys and I wasn't confident, drugs and alcohol were my resource for confidence, for relaxing my nervous system, for comfort in my own skin. And as a result, Amy, and then I'm going to shut up and let you analyze this and go into
This is
it.
so good.
But all of my relationships with girls throughout my 20s and early 30s until the age of 32 that involved drugs and alcohol, they were just so toxic and unhealthy. I couldn't even imagine a sober relationship. I had my first sober relationship at the age of 33, I think. 34, actually. Yeah, 34. So I was, off drugs and alcohol for 2 years. But I hadn't worked through any of the trauma.
Yeah.
I got off drugs and alcohol, immediately became a counselor to help other people. So I was focusing on my huge caseload for years of people and helping them and exercising and reading and learning. Meanwhile, I didn't deal with any of that trauma. I didn't even know I had trauma. I didn't even know that I had anxiety or depression or anything like that. Those things weren't even in my mind. So when I got into a sober relationship, that first one with all my unresolved traumas, with all my, I hadn't learned how to be like myself. So I was pretending to be someone I wasn't for the first few months. She was pretending to be someone she wasn't. We were both portraying what we thought the other of us would like best. And then a couple months into it, our real selves came out, and it was a mismatch, totally incongruent with what we had portrayed. At that point, we were too codependent and, like both of us didn't want to look for another relationship. We both thought this is the best I can do. We were in love. So then it was just years of 80% toxic arguing and just horrible stuff. 20% like the best times ever. And so it just went on and on and on. Of course, the sex was just amazing. So it was really hard to just cut ties. And, she'd break up with me. I'd break up with her. We'd always get back together because we didn't want to go through that period of healing from the breakup. It was just so difficult, painful for both of us. She was really sensitive and empathic and trauma from childhood and adulthood too. So then we just keep coming back together to self-soothe. I would soothe myself with her and vice versa. So, a couple years ago, I started finally my first healthy relationship. And what I did was 100% honesty, no lies. I was like, I'm never going to lie in a relationship again. And I told her, I don't lie. I'm never going to lie to you ever. I'll be up honest with you about everything. Here's what I'm like. And I didn't pretend to be anything other than my exact, unique, quirky, and all the things self. And that was like the ticket. Who knew? But I had to become confident in my own self over many, many, many years. It took a long time to be able to be okay with presenting that. So now I'll shut up because I have a feeling a lot of people are really, really going to want to learn from you how they can navigate this life. Sober relationships. What if they're sober and their spouse, boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever is still drinking or is still using substances? There's so many dynamics, the masculine and feminine energy, honesty, all these kind of foundational things. So Amy, how do you have healthy, sober relationships?
Oh gosh. I want to pause for a moment because thank you, first of all, for sharing that. And anyone that is listening right now that identifies at all with any of what Matt has shared about, like, this is real and this is happening in men and women and however you identify with humans all over the world. Language doesn't matter. All of the things do not matter. This is a very human condition. And I do want to speak directly to the men that identify as masculine, because it's so difficult we have so much unhealed masculine energy in our world. Just, I don't like to even use the word toxic masculinity. It's so tender to my heart, because no one is teaching how to do this different. And now we have a lot of teachers out there that are teaching how to do this differently. And I think that it's something that's hidden and closeted for so long that sometimes when I say the word healthy conscious relationship, people are like, whatever. Like, that's not even possible, because there's such a unwillingness to even admit, like, part of that story that you just told. And as you were saying that story, I just wanted to, like, jump into your room with you and just be like, oh, brother, thank you. I mean, really, thank you. Because men, women, humans, we all need to hear that this is natural and this is normal. And so much of my story is very similar. It's absolutely from the feminine perspective, and how I used my masculine to hide and mask and do all of these things. So the first number one thing that I would say to anyone out there that's like, what does a healthy relationship look like? Yes, it is built on honesty. Number one. And the first person to be honest with is yourself. Right? Because it is human nature. We crave connection so deeply that we will subtly lie to other people to receive love, to get validation, to stroke our egos, to feel love, to do all of the things. And I think that the hardest person to be honest with so often is ourselves, is to really truly be honest with ourselves and say, like, oh my gosh, I have a very anxious system. I am always going to, I'll speak for myself, right? Like, one of my big things as a conscious woman is, like, I will just gravitate towards the most avoidant man out in the room. Like, naturally, I'll just be like, oh my God, he's the hottest guy here for sure, because he's avoidant, right? And my patterning has taken me there for so long because of my lack of self-esteem, because of my original incident of abandonment, because that's the only way that I thought. But I know it. And I can be really honest. And I can even walk up to the man and be like, you are so, like, delicious. Like, I totally want to fuck you. And I'm going to walk the other way, and please don't, like, even come close. Right? Because that's my pattern. And what I want is not that. I want a secure masculine in my life. I want someone who's going to hold me and be my rock for me. But the thing is that I didn't always walk up to that man. Usually I was like, I'm going to just, like, chase you all night long so that we can play this dynamic, so that we can play this role, just like you and your partner played for so many years, which is so common, especially in our space, in the space of people who are in recovery from coping outside of ourselves. Because the easiest thing to do is to find another human in one of the recovery spaces that's going to totally 100% agree with your pattern. And then they're going to do it. They're going to be sober, but are you really sober? You're not.
Right.
Yeah, you're not. And then, I mean, I have so many stories of people who get pregnant in treatment or right outside of treatment, and then they're connected in this really, like, low functioning relationship. It works. I don't want to make it wrong or bad, because that's not what I'm up to in the world. But it's a low functioning relationship. And I love what you said, because it was like you and your partner decided that you would settle for that rather than to support each other to up level, because that's so much more difficult. So the first step in all of this is finding first a container in which you feel safe being real honest with yourself. Because as this honesty comes up, it's also going to activate the groove that escaped yourself, right? So as you start to be really honest of like, wow, I'm really insecure, then the groove of like, let's escape this. Let's watch porn. Let's smoke a cigarette. Let's go back to the old coping mechanism. Let's go run and have sex with someone. Like that groove is going to open up, and really learning to hold the honesty in your own field, right? Like in your own self of being like, wow, this is really real. And can I hold this? Because until you can hold it for yourself, it will be impossible to be honest with someone else. And I think that that's something like, if no one takes anything else from this podcast today, which I, hope that you'll take a lot, but learning that you're safe to hold your own energies and be real honest with what you desire. There's nothing wrong with your desires. Absolutely nothing wrong with your desires when you can be honest about them. And if your patterning has been to lie your whole life, then you will lie to yourself, because that nervous system response is what's keeping you safe. Does that make sense? I want to start just with that one simple thing, because it's so incredibly important to moving forward in any kind of healthy relationship. And I want to speak to one more thing before I ask you to ask me questions. But I think something that's really important as well is that people are often already in relationships that aren't completely working.
Yeah.
And it's like you've been through so much. Now you're out of recovery, you're out of treatment, you're, have a few years under your belt, and you're realizing like, I don't really know my partner or like my partner, because your masks have come down or your partner's masks have come down. And again, inviting that honesty to the relationship is not easy, because you've been agreeing with each other's patterns for sometimes 20 years. And now from this lens of like having all of the masks taken away, you're like, oh shit, I'm not even happy. I never was. And that was a big part of why I drank and used the way that I did. Then how do you repair from there? And it's that same number one process. Like, find a container, find a guide that you can be really honest with. Of like, I know I have 3 kids, but this shit ain't working. And this is why. And there is always an opportunity to repair, but it's going to take a lot of discomfort and a lot of uncomfortable conversations in order to really come to a common ground where you can build that bridge to trust again.
Ooh, I'm going to try to stay organized with the dovetails I want to do. Consciousness. When I was growing up with my new age, very spiritual, meditating, healthy parents that were teachers of meditation and herbal medicine, they would often say, they'd make a remark about a politician or about another person. Oh, that person's not very conscious, or, oh, they're so unconscious. So I grew up hearing these types of words, not really knowing exactly what it meant. Well, it turns out that a lot of people in the world are unconscious, or they're not highly conscious. I love the meta habit of awareness, because I wasn't even looking at these things before, just so in the habit of just living life without ever looking at myself deeply, like you're talking about, being really honest about myself. Never did that. It was just like this skill that I hadn't even started to develop, let alone optimize, of self-inquiry. And, like I said, a lot of it was looks. what's my image? It wasn't about this kind of stuff like, what are my what do I have trauma? Do I have anxiety? You know, I didn't even know about personal development. I didn't even know that you could have a growth mindset. I thought I had a fixed mindset. So a lot of the stuff was just materialistic stuff, surface level image, surfboards, cars, nice clothes. And so it took a long time to get to the point where being conscious. So then for two people to be what if one person in the relationship is sober and pretty conscious? The other person, maybe they're sober, or maybe they drink every once in a while or smoke a little weed. But what if they're really unconscious, really unaware? What if the person that is now sober and into this new lifestyle, a new chapter, what if their consciousness is radiating at acceptance and willingness and gratefulness and love and joy? And then their partner, their level of consciousness is calibrating at pride and anger and resentment and fear, or maybe they're at reason. What if one person is resonating at love and the other person's just really in their brain, right? Just really analytical. This was me for many years.
Yeah.
That 14 inches from our brain to our heart is like the longest path. Once I got to here, I was like, oh, there's no other way to live. This is for me. This is the way to do it. And then real quick, the girl that I was talking about earlier, she had a very masculine mask that she was wearing. We would butt heads so much. This was my phase where I was like super like really masculine. I was going to Tony Robbins seminars and rah, personal development, breakthrough, overcome, success, just working out heavy weights and stuff. So I was like hyper masculine, and she was putting herself through school, working, going to school to become a marriage and family therapist, so really hardcore at like getting things done, really organized. She, to do all that stuff, she was, getting into her masculine a lot. And I think she was doing it to protect herself too. So both of us were so masculine, and she was used to feminine. All of her boyfriends before me, she told me this. It's not like I guessed it. All of her boyfriends before me, like literally all of them, were really, really, really feminine.
Oh.
And she was really, really masculine. It worked out great.
Yeah.
And she was like their kind of mentor, and like this masculine mentor guy. And so she with me, oh my goodness, I was like the polar opposite of all these super. And I saw pictures of her ex-boyfriends too. Very feminine, beautiful, wonderful, sensitive, artistic, creative, compassionate men. Just these wonderful guys.
Yeah.
But I was not like that. I was like avoiding anything feminine, except for like some music and stuff. I would relax into some feminine here and there, but I was really masculine, and so was she. And we're like oil and water. So this would be a great time, because probably a lot of people don't even know what the heck I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh,
And
gosh.
I'm sure that you know way more about this particular topic than I do, guaranteed. So what's that all about? Masculine and feminine and toxic masculinity. What's all this stuff? And what are these polar opposites? And what about the magnetization? How can people use this?
Yeah, so beautiful. So first, one thing that I want to answer your first question of like, what if you're growing and your partner isn't growing?
Right.
So one of the main things that I want to say about that is, can we please normalize, whatever word you want to use here, y'all, parting ways. Parting ways is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It is safe to part ways in friendships. It's safe to part ways in family relationships. It's safe to part ways in marriages, with children, without children. It's safe to part ways in partnerships, with work. Like, can we please normalize parting ways? You are not bad. You are not morally flawed. There's nothing wrong. Like, if your partner decides, like, I don't want to do this with you, and on top of that, there's no polarity, which I'll explain in just a moment, then it might just be time to part ways. And it's hard. You're going to grieve. It's going to hurt. Children will be affected. Family systems will be affected. But like, you're choosing consciousness. And so you're going to be okay. Like, you're going to have a huge gift. You're going to have a papaya on your shoulder. I mean, seriously, though, it's like so much more is available when we can hang in the grief of parting ways, because parting ways is painful, but it's so necessary for growth. And I work with so many couples where one person is not willing to grow. And I will just say it, like, this is where we're at. You know, if you're not willing to grow, you are not going to work out. And it's going to be harder on the children and the family system if you decide to stay, right? Because you're going to continue to do like you and your partner were, where she was trying to mother you, trying to coach you, and trying to be the masculine, and you already were. Or that was actually her medicine, was for you to be in your masculine so that she could be in her feminine. Not to say that at school she couldn't be in her masculine, but like, she wanted to lead with her feminine, but she had no idea how to. And so I still would say that, like, y'all taught each other something so beautiful.
Best lessons. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just break it down here, because I think that this is so important in our space. So we talked a little bit about this on our last podcast, but there's masculine energy and feminine energy. Everyone has it. There's a divine form of it in which the masculine is like the keeper of time, the rock that the ocean, that the feminine can push up against. The masculine is always craving freedom. The masculine loves structure. The masculine loves to listen when he's in his divinity. He really can sit back and listen and observe. And time is never a thing. It's just like, oh, we have all the time in the world, baby. So we all have this. Like, in order for me to run my business as effectively as I do, I have a very strong masculine within me. The feminine is chaotic. The feminine is constantly, while the masculine is seeking freedom, the feminine is constantly seeking love. There cannot be enough love. Like, you know, I'm just like, oh my God, love me more, please. Love me more, love me more, love me more. It's never going to be enough. The feminine is consistently like testing the masculine. Can I trust you? Are you going to be there? Are you going to continue to be the rock? We're very good at that when we're in our feminine, and especially when we're in a relationship with beautiful polarity. The feminine is chaotic. The feminine is emotion. The feminine is creativity. The feminine is the ocean. The reason that surfers love the ocean so much is because it's a touch, a caress of like just the juiciest, yummiest, like, like feminine energy that you can feel. Like, I love getting tossed around in her power, right? And think about juicy, delicious, yummy sex, y'all. Like, when you're in this kind of relationship and the woman is begging for penetration, that's the hottest sex ever. Because it's like, oh no, baby, you're going to wait. I'm going to wait until you're dripping, until you're begging, until you're on your knees asking me to, like, please penetrate you. And that is the polarity. And I know that everyone who's listening right now can feel that. Like, we've all had moments of that beautiful, like, yum in our lives. And so often we're so masked and we're so covered up that our divine essence is lost. And the drugs and the alcohol and the weird behaviors and the tattoos and the big trucks. And, you know, for me, I played in my masculine all the time. I wanted to fuck like the boys. I wanted to make money like the boys, But actually, I'm at my best when I'm still making even more money in my feminine, when I'm like leading in the feminine, beautiful nature that I'm in. I can breathe easier. I can live easier. And I can attract from my true essence. And so if you're out there listening and you're like, I don't even know where I land, you know, a very simple question to ask yourself is, there's two different things. I'll give the more PG version of it, and then the more R-rated version of it. But the PG version is like if you're in a grocery store and you need help, you can't find something in the grocery store. Are you going to ask someone to help you? Or are you going to spend the extra 30 minutes looking for it for yourself? Right? Like when I was in my masculine, I would be like, oh, I'll find it. I'll find it myself. I'll freaking do this. But truly in my feminine, I'm like, hi, I need some help. Where is the, alkaline water? I can't find it. Whatever it is that I desire. The other more R-rated version of this is like, do you want to be pushed up against the wall? Or do you want to be pushed up against the wall? All day long, I want to be pushed up against the wall. Like, I know that. And I was pushing against the wall for so long in my relationships. And I always say to the men that I've been in a relationship with, like, I didn't know any better until I did. And now I'm like, oh, I never want to mommy you. I never want to coach you. I never want to be that for you. I want you to go find your brothers and get those needs met. I want you to feel the freedom. I want you to feel like I trust you no matter what. But I didn't have that nervous system capacity to hold that because I was constantly in this wounded state that my nervous system didn't literally know how to hold that energy. So I'm giving this in a more storytelling perspective so that you all can really relate to this in your own relationship. Are you pushing up against a wall when you want to be the one pushed up against the wall? Are you mommying your partner? Are you coaching your partner? Right? And then are you telling lies because you're not really getting your needs met here? So you're not being honest. You're not being in full acceptance of her chaos. Are you making her chaos wrong? Are you making his freedom wrong? Because if we're doing that to each other in relationship, we're going to continue to go through the motions without having that more expansive, more orgasmic relationship that is possible. And I mean orgasmic in all of the ways, right? Like not just in the bedroom, but like, oh, there's so much pleasure to be had when you can really be in your energy and relate from that place. It's very vulnerable and it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, I love this stuff so much. On day 4, I think it was, or maybe day 5 of Tony Robbins' Date with Destiny seminar, the whole day was on relationships, and it was coming from kind of these dynamics that we're talking about, these masculine and feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine, wounded, all these things. And I could get this wrong. I might miss one or two, but I believe he was saying the masculine looks for things like you were saying, the freedom and autonomy. It wants to feel free. It wants to feel respected or like admired or something like that. And I forget the third one. And then the feminine energy, he said, wants to feel seen and heard and safe all the time. And so the feminine energy, for this example, let's just do a feminine female and a masculine male. And then he used the word AFT. Feminine females want to be seen, heard, and feel safe. They want you to really see them. They want presence, to be seen, heard, and feel safe all the fucking time. AFT. All the fucking time, all day, every day. Does this guy see me? Is he present with me? Am I safe with him? Will he protect me? And then the men that are masculine in this regards, if the girl's like micromanaging him and nitpicky and criticizing him, that's what happened to me when she was in her feminine sometimes, but it was a kind of really bad situation. So I didn't feel any autonomy or freedom. I wanted to go surf and hang out with my friends. And then she'd be like, no, we need to hang out, because she had abandonment issues and a bunch of other things going on. So we would trigger each other on so many levels. And it was just to get out of that. I'm so glad that I'm remembering to bring this up. The sunk cost phenomenon. So you were
Mm,
talking about it's okay to part ways, I think was the term that you used, right? The phrase
yeah.
parting ways, it's okay. When people have a lot invested in it, right? They've put in this kind of relationship equity. They've put in time, they've put in money, they've put in energy, they've put in emotional things, they've put in like so much, so they build up this relationship equity. So even though it might be like the most obvious common sense thing to do to just part ways, that's going to be best for everyone, then they're all of a sudden, at least subconsciously, if not also consciously, thinking about that sunk cost. So once you part ways, oh, I'm losing all this that I put into it's going to be gone. Then, like drugs and alcohol, you got to get through the relationship breakup, detox, and early recovery phase. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
coming off of drugs and alcohol because you're losing the love and the hugs and the sex and the acceptance and the safety of being in this relationship. So you're losing a lot, but you're gaining so much more if it really is all for the best, then getting through all that stuff. But if
Mm,
people aren't conscious, if they're not like aware of what's going on in these things, if they don't have this kind of self-honesty and self-acceptance, how are they even going to like think about these things and
mm.
contemplate them? No, they're just going to be in this never-ending negative relationship pattern where it's just getting worse and worse, and then just stay together forever, or bad stuff can happen.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I really want to speak to this because, uh, first of all, I want you to know that if you're in this relationship right now, that like what Matt was explaining, where you have taken on this dynamic, there's really nothing wrong with the dynamic. It is the polarity of the energy. Where it gets tricky is that it starts to get used as a manipulation instead of like, oh baby, like I can really see
Mhm,
that you're craving your freedom right now.
mhm,
Go be free, and let's schedule some, and then for the more masculine person in this relationship, for them to say like, and I'm going to make time for that later today. And boy, you look really fucking hot today. Will you twirl around in me in that dress? Or,
mhm.
whatever, however you identify out there, like that version of it, like where we can actually experience a lot of love and a lot of joy in this polarity of yum. It's so yummy when we're like that. And something that I say to my couples so very often is like, can we both turn towards love? Right? Can we be in love? I think Papaya has something to say. Are you
I
okay?
thought
Is
she
there
was gonna like turn my microphone off. Papaya, pick a spot. Go back to your home. Go back to your habitat. Go. Or you can watch from there, but don't knock over the webcam or the microphone. You got to go to the bathroom? Go ahead. You can poop right there. I'll pick it up.
Aw.
Come here, baby. Or go to your habitat. Okay, keep going.
Okay, I love it.
She's
It's so
fine.
beautiful.
Mhm.
Oh, well, life is always happening. Like this is why we do this
She's never
thing.
done this before, ever, on a
It's getting
podcast.
activated by this yummy conversation. Do you
Yeah.
need to attend to
No, she's good.
her?
She's just,
Okay.
she's fine.
Yeah. So, I really want to make this again, naturalize it, normalize it. Like it is so possible to heal from these places. If you've been in a relationship for 20 plus years, if both parties, both people decide like, yes, like I want to experience a deeper level of intimacy with you, and I really want to rise into this relationship together and be, in recovery from whatever it is that we're in recovery from. Like that's just a whole nother level of deeper, more awakening, more beautiful energy that will be able to flow through your relationship. And if that's not the case, then my suggestion so often is spend some time after you part ways getting very clean. Like when I say clean, like scrub your what you desire down until you start really seeking it again. And, I made a very conscious decision to stay single for as long as it was going to take me to scrub my stuff down, to really get clean with myself and my desires and how I like to relate and what's important to me, because I didn't want to go and repeat these same patterns and behaviors in the next relationship. So if there was a second step that I would recommend today, it's like, after you get honest with yourself, scrub it down more. Like, this is where having a mentor, having a guide is so important, because if you don't spend that time scrubbing it down more, you will go out and probably end up in a very similar relationship. And then 10 years will go by or whatever will go by, and you're like, oh shit, why did I do this again? And it's simply because, like, you didn't spend that time to get honest with yourself. And it's really important.
Yeah, so many people, it's just beyond fixable. For a lot of people, it's very fixable relationship. For some, there's just so much history, so many times that each person hurt each other, so much stuff, and it's just like, that's in ourselves. Those fights and attacks, my goodness gracious, what's going on here? It's like a pterodactyl coming in. Yeah, but just that's what it was like for me in the relationship, talking about just when we tried to work it out towards the end there, I was just like, I just can't look at her without feeling all those horrible things we said to each other. Horrible, just the worst things we said to each other. Just the deceit, the kind of just, so eventually, not only were we really incompatible, at least in that phase of our lives, totally incompatible, but there was so beyond that. Now there was so much history of all these memories and stuff. So when I looked at her face, I just, those feelings would come up. So yeah, this is a huge one for people to really, like you said, do some contemplation on it. And of course, I'm a big fan of, learning about things. And if you can do it on your own, great. If not, work with a mentor. And so this is probably a great place to go into, what do you do and what is your website? So where can people find you? What are all the different things that you do? I know you have these great webinars and ebooks, like Healthy Sober Relationships webinar. You've got a Thrive in Recovery with Amy coaching practice. You help people that are leaving substances in the past. Like you were saying, you coach people on relationships, and you coach couples. So you're very dynamic. And I saw I'm definitely going to link to that article, that interview of you on medium.com, because it's so good. So we'll put that in the show notes. And yeah, this is a great place for you to just talk about where people can find you and hook up with you.
Yeah, totally. So again, it's Back to the Future Day, November 5th, 2021. And you can always find me at the same places, at Thrive in Recovery with Amy, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and my website. So at Thrive in Recovery with Amy is the thing. I do my best on audio like this. So listen to a podcast that I'm on. It's a really good opportunity to get to know me. And I really believe in practicing what I teach. So I'm very vulnerable and honest, and you'll get to really know me on Instagram, because I'm just myself everywhere I go, which is such a beautiful, a beautiful place to be. As we go into the fourth quarter of 2021 and 2022, I'm going to be really landing a foundations course for people to really come together and understand nervous system work, understand relationships. So look out for a beautiful opportunity to, the way that I put this is, it's the foundations course is everything that no one taught you.
Oh,
Right? It's like, this foundations course, it will change your life. and I've watched it change so many people's life. But I'm really taking my one-on-one practice, I put it into a foundations so that I can serve more people, get this word out there in a bigger way. And really, like, the ripple effect of healthy conscious relationships changing the world starts with one person at a time, understanding the stuff that Matt, you and I, get to practice every day, moment to moment. And so this foundations course is going to be really beautiful. And then for recovery professionals, I'm starting something very, very special in the new year as well. Yeah, because that's how we're going to change the world, is us being together, helping each other, collaborating with one another. So I have a very special invite. So, like, come closer, because 2022 is expanding even more. And the foundation of everything that I do is relationship. It's all relationship based, because that's where we thrive together, is in relationship. And understanding all these little subtle dynamics is so important, because it doesn't make you feel so fucking weird, right? You can be out there feeling so alone and so weird. It's all very natural. And yeah, I'm very passionate about making this all bigger.
Thank you so much. Wonderful stuff. One of my past clients, maybe 6 months ago, it ended or something like that, and she was a couple months off alcohol. She had listened to the interview that I first did with you that was heavy on your story and trauma-informed care. So many people gave me positive feedback about that and wanted to see you on again, and so I was really happy to hear that. This particular client forwarded me one of the emails that she received from you in the Thrive and Recovery with Amy email list. It was really beautiful. It's just your stuff. When I was talking about that 14 inches from the head to the heart, you made that journey and you live from your heart and you write from your heart. That is just so beautiful to me, because so many people write from their heads, and it's just, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to make it wrong. I do that a lot too. It's just so apparent how much you write from your heart, and you got the stuff in your head to really provide the education and the tools and the step-by-step systems, and you infuse it and lead with that heart, that soul, that intuition. It's super beautiful. This has been an amazing interview and chat. Thank you so much. I'd, of course, love to have you on a third time in the future. And thanks again, Amy, for sharing your knowledge and your heart and soul with our Elevation Recovery and Fit Recovery audience.
Thank you so much. And I want to just mention this. Thank you for deeply seeing me in my feminine. Like, it feels so good to be seen that way by the masculine. Thank you.